This edition of the Hotspur America podcast is dedicated to the victims' families, and all those affected by the awful and cowardly events that transpired in Paris yesterday evening.
And naturally, I'm a Tottenham man, obviously. I can reflect back to being a player with and manager of some of the finest players that have ever been in the game.
The place is fantastic, the tradition of this club.
To be the manager of 3 cup-winning teams here, I'm so lucky, it's untrue.
Hotspur America podcast, airing every week during the English Premier League season.
What a glory night at White Hart Lane. This great and historic football club. Joyful night down the Tottenham High Road.
Hotspur America, the original US-based podcast dedicated solely to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Gascoigne gonna have a crack? He is, you know. Oh, I say! Schoolboy's own stuff.
I hate Arsenal, just hate them.
Oh, what a goal! Unbelievable! Wow, this is incredible.
We're the Yids in America.
This is there to tap in. What a fantastic run! He scored! And it's turned home, Eric Dyer.
This is your Hotspur America. Episode 14 of the Hotspur America podcast, International Break Edition. With us today is Sam, as usual. Sam, how are you?
Good morning.
It's a very early morning, 7 a.m. for us and 6 a.m. for Simon, who's in Nashville on business. Simon, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm central, don't worry. I'm back in the real world.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good. At least it's not that early. We also have a couple of special guests joining us today from the club. Second time around with us, Daniel Wynne. Daniel, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's not quite as early over here, but I hope you think it's worth it getting up at that hour for Paul and I. Might
be just about nap time over there.
Yeah, right. That's an age thing.
Yeah, it's an age thing. And joining us for the first time, PA announcer for Spurs, Paul Coyte, is with us today. Paul, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks. Thanks for asking me. The thing is, I'm actually only about a mile away from Daniel, but it's actually 7 o'clock in the evening where I am, so I can't really quite work that out. So, well, what's going on? We've already beaten Chelsea 6-0. Maybe there's a little time difference thing here. Thank you for asking me. It's lovely to
when he says he's a mile away from me, just to be clear about that, he's in the guest wing of his house and I'm in the bedroom, yeah.
Actually, what I meant is I'm actually a mile away from Daniel when I'm talking about personalities here. So, but, I'd say it's lovely to be here, but I'm in my loft, and really that is not a place I want to be. But it's lovely to speak to you.
It's lovely to speak to you, too. What an awesome introduction. I think that may be a show first. That was quite entertaining, to be quite clear.
It goes downhill from here, I swear.
Yeah, and well, we'll see. Daniel, I'm going to start with you. Just real quick, can you guide us through basically how you ended up with the television commentary job at White Hart Lane? You're, 15 years now?
Yeah, I didn't have a grey hair on my head at the time. And, basically I started off doing the Sky Fan Zone thing, which was, there was a fan commentary which was on the red button here. You got an alternative to the main Martin Tyler commentary, etc. And it was 2 fans, 1 of each club. And I did that for the first 6 or 7 for Spurs and the first 2 or 3 for England. And at the time, Sky ran Tottenham's website, and they needed an audio commentator, and I kind of got the gig that way. And I guess a few months later they put me onto the TV side, and been there ever since. And now it's changed and it's grown, and it's now every home game and every away game. So yeah, I'm really lucky and I love every minute of it.
So what you're saying is that if I start commentating the matches, watching it on TV, you're saying there's a chance.
Listen, if I can get it, believe me, there's always a chance, right?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be something, right?
Yeah, I was just in the right place at the right time, and literally nobody else was doing it for Sky at that time on that fan commentary, which is now obsolete. They've stopped doing it, and yeah, it just kind of all went from there. I was really lucky, and I consider myself to be really lucky, and every time I walk through the main reception at White Hart Lane, I just count my lucky stars, and I don't take it for granted at all. And
it's probably when they say "Who are you?" every time you walk through. That's probably why you don't take it for granted, Daniel.
Yeah, and then I turn around and say, "Yeah, don't you know who I am?" And they call for the doctors because they say, this guy doesn't know who he is, so help him out, right?
They look at you and think you're Robbie Keane.
Yeah.
Is that the extent of your commentary experience prior to joining the cast at White Hart Lane?
Yeah, doesn't it show? No, I'm a Spurs fan through and through. I've been a season ticket holder since I was 5 years old. So there's been, I can say this now, there's been conversations down the years of maybe looking to expand it a little bit. But at the end of the day, I just want to do Tottenham, right?
Yeah.
You know, I've got a full-time job, so I get the best of both worlds. So I'm just really happy and really lucky with what I do. So.
And I remember last time we talked, I asked you this, but we've gained listeners, and not all of them have had a chance to go back and listen. So I want to ask you this: that very first time walking into the gantry and doing what you do now, can you describe how that felt?
Oh my God, it's high.
Was it cold?
It's cold, yeah. It was December. The very first one on the gantry I did was December. It was
my goodness.
Game, and it was when Les Ferdinand scored the 10,000th Premier League goal. And it was about 18 minutes into the game. And the first goal that afternoon was going to be the 10,000th Premier League game. And believe me, I had about 15 different people talking to me at once. And when the goal went in, my producer, who was a female with a really soft voice, screamed, "That's the first goal." I couldn't really hear her, and I just went with it. That's the 10,000th goal, and luckily enough, it was.
Oh wow!
But yeah, it was really high, and it was covered in pigeon mess at the time.
Oh my goodness!
They hadn't cleaned it for a while. But yeah, my first reaction was, "Jesus Christ, get me down! It's too high."
Can you imagine?
I hate heights.
I'm not afraid of heights. I'm just afraid of falling. Maybe that's...
Yes, that's fair.
I'm afraid of pigeons.
Well, you know, people that listen regularly, they'll hear me say, "Oh, pigeons literally just flown past me." It does get a bit hairy up there sometimes, but yeah.
And Paul, you know, when we started the show, I introduced you as the PA announcer for Spurs, but I know that you do so much more. What exactly is your official title, and what do your duties entail?
You know what? I don't really have an official title. I mean, the way it happened for me is 11, 12 years ago, and it's a very long story, so I hope you have a couple of hours, but I'll try and keep it as quick as I can. I've been on the radio over here for years and years, and I was a season ticket holder and a fan since I was a little boy. Dad was ill, so we stopped going. And then about a year or so later, we were going to play Norwich at home. My wife is from Norwich. It was the first game Spurs were going to play at Norwich, and I spoke to a friend of mine at the radio station who's very well known in the country, and I said, "Do you know anybody at Spurs, that maybe I could get some tickets for?" And he said, "Well, I know this guy." Anyway, the guy who turned out to be Mike Rollo, who was the in charge of all commercial things there at the time, phoned me up and said, "Yeah, we'd love to come along. Would you at all be interested in hosting in one of the lounges with the ex-players?" And I'm like, "What, are you kidding me?" Yeah, so I went along. And he said, "Well, come along." And he said, "Firstly, could you fill in for Martin Chivers the first day?" Now, I named my dog after Martin Chivers. This is how serious this is. And I'm meeting childhood heroes, Pat Jennings, Martin Peters, legends of the club. And when you get nervous and you talk a bit too much, and I'm like, no, and I was absolutely petrified. So saw the game, went up on stage, did my interview with Mido, which is another story, and then they said, "Well, great, can you come back next week?" And 12 years later, I'm still doing it. And it was about a couple of years after the first one there. Then they said, "Look, is there any chance you could do an interview on the pitch for us at half time?" And they said,
wow.
Sky going to take it live. It's going to be David Ginola. Are you happy with that? And I'm like, "Yeah, fine, no problem." And I'm just thinking, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? This is just ridiculous." So the amazing thing is that I had no idea how it would affect me as I did it. So I went down to pitch side, and I was introduced, as Pete Abbott would normally do, and I walked out. We used to do it in the middle of the pitch. So I walked out in the middle of White Hart Lanes. This is at half time, 36,000 people. I looked up at the big screen to my right, and I could see myself walking across the pitch. Then I lost the power of being able to walk in a straight line. And I swear this is true. And then I looked down at the pitch and the field. And as I looked down at the pitch, I started getting head spin. My head started rushing, and the whole thing started flying. Because I thought, "Oh my God, I'm going to pass out." It was that much of a religious experience. The whole thing starts spinning, and I'm thinking, all I got to do is just try and get to the middle of the pitch without falling down. And I look up, and there's David Ginola with his arms up and going, "Hello, my friend, come here!" And that's when I thought, this is probably the most surreal moment of my life, and something I'd like to do for quite a while. And it's amazing. It's just as Daniel says, for a Spurs fan, every year I keep expecting someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Listen, son, go back up to where you should be and go back up and settle there." But each year I seem to be getting away with it. But it's an amazing gig.
That's remarkable. And you've been a Spurs fan, your whole life? And
yeah.
How'd you become a supporter? Was it a family influence or something you chose?
My granddad went to the 1921 Cup final. He was a London bus driver, and my dad then was a Spurs fan, and as were his brothers, and then it was just passed on to me. First game. 14th of February 1976, played Queen's Park Rangers at home and we lost 3-0. And I remember coming home, crying my eyes out, and my mum sitting there going, what's the matter? We lost. And things don't change. You know, I still...
Wow. Now, last year we had the opportunity, Simon and I, we kind of talked off prior. We had the opportunity to meet you. We've met Daniel, and we had an opportunity to meet you when they had the supporters conference thing at the training ground for the Hull City match. And when I ask you this question, you know, what's been your most enjoyable experience as an MC for Spurs? I'm sure it was meeting us. It was. It was the moment you said to me, and I said, well, how come you become a Spurs fan? You said, Spurs chose me. And I thought, that's beautiful. And then I met a Russian guy who then I said, what's your... And he went, Spurs chose me. And I don't know whether it was because he heard you. I love the fact that it's Spurs chose me. I love that. I can't believe you actually remember that.
I do remember it. I remember you showing me the tattoos. In front of ladies as well. Yeah. No need for that. But I do remember it very well.
Yeah, up a little bit.
Every tattoo, all of them.
No, it was half of one of them. It was which was good. So so the most for me the most enjoyable moment. There's quite a few, and I think for me was the 125th anniversary game that we played against Aston Villa, and there was a moment I was out there, and they said, well, you've got to introduce all these legends, which was amazing, but just before. Everybody was going to come out. The guy that was in charge of basically the floor manager said, look, you're going to have to fill. So I'm on the big screen in front of all these people. Just fill for 2 minutes. And I said, what are we going to do? We'll just do anything, but just fill for 2 minutes. Anyway, out of the corner of my eye, everybody was given a flag. Everybody was given one of these amazing 125th anniversary flags. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this kid. And he just had it in his hand. And I thought, oh, yeah. I said, can everybody in the ground now wave your flags? Do it now. And everybody, 36,000 people, waved these flags. And you know what? It's still the hair on the back of my neck stands up when I think about it. And looked around, and the whole place was blue and white. And then we brought out the all our ex-players, and it was amazing. Wow. Was it, Daniel? Do you remember that?
Of course I remember it, and that clip is still shown before the game sometimes. It's the flags everywhere. Even the Villa fans had their own colour flags as well. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a great night, and they came out with the trophies. Do you remember that as well? And what a night! And then of course Kabul got the equaliser in the 92nd minute or whatever it was, and it was.
Yeah, whatever happened to him? I remember that guy. He was something. And
Ken, I don't want to take over here. Ken, but you've got to ask Paul. My favourite Paul story is Martin Yole on the summer holidays. I'm not going to say any more, but Paul, over to you, sir.
Are you sure you want to hear this, fellas? I'm sorry, it sounds like we're taking over here, but the
no, do it.
You want to hear the Martin Yole story? The Martin Yole story, Martin, usually at the end of the season, we'd have the Player of the Season awards, and we'd do it on the pitch, and everybody, and then you'd get the lap of whatever they call it, everybody would come out and wave and
appreciation.
A lap of appreciation. Thank you, Daniel, that's what they call it. So, there would be, the manager would come out and he'd usually say a few words, thank you very much, it's been a great season. Anyway, Martin Yole was there. And then Martin came out and he stood out and, thank you very much. And it was like this booming. You couldn't really, when you're standing right next to him, all you can hear is, and you can just hear the echoing around the stadium. Anyway, I always like to ask questions, usually not the sort of football things like, who's your influences and who's your favourite player, and all, stuff that people might want to know. And we were talking about stuff, and I said, so what's happening in the summer, Martin? What are you doing? You mustn't talk about buying players. I said, well, you going away? You going on holiday? Where you going? So, carried on, and then that was the end of it. So anyway, a couple of months later, it was the Enfield Working Men's Club. There was him and Chrissy Houghton and me. Were you there? I didn't even know you were.
It was a supporters trust thing, yeah, of course.
It was, yeah, of course you would have been. So it was it was being held there, and just so he remembered who I was, and that Martin was there, and I just said, Martin, this time, if I ask a question, please don't take the microphone and walk away, because I'm left standing there. And then he goes, let me tell you something. And I said, what? And he goes, the guy that was on the pitch asking me questions? I said, yeah. And he goes, what a fucking idiot. You see those stupid questions? He asked me where I'm going. He asked me where I'm going on fucking holiday. What kind of a stupid questions? I'm going, yeah, you won't get that from me. You won't get that from me.
Brilliant.
So that's an absolutely true story. So always, my fallback where you're going on holiday is always for the people that are in the know that always know about that story. But it's absolutely true.
Funny. Well, that's a perfect segue, Paul. I'm assuming you've interviewed tons of managers, because let's face it, we've had tons of managers over the years. Who was your favourite manager that you interviewed, and maybe give us a story of that particular manager.
I've probably interviewed, all going back to, probably Martin. And Martin was great fun.